Let's talk about unpaid overtime claims. Generally speaking, any employee who works more than 40 hours per week must be paid time and a half their regular rate of pay for each work hour over 40. Now, one of the most common misunderstandings in this area of the law is the simple fact that an employee is paid by a salary versus an hourly rate means the employee is not entitled to overtime pay. That is completely inaccurate, and the fact that an employee is paid a salary, generally speaking, does not mean that the employee is not entitled to overtime pay. Both the Fair Labor Standards Act, which is a federal law, and the Pennsylvania Minimum Wage Act, a state law, provide that if an employee works more than 40 hours per week, the employee has to be paid overtime pay, time and a half their regular rate. Now, in a legal action concerning unpaid overtime, the employee can be entitled to 1.5 times the hourly rate, double damages, or what the law calls liquidated damages, which is another, if the employee is entitled to $25,000 of overtime pay, under the liquidated damage provision, the $25,000 would turn into $50,000. The employee can also be entitled to reasonable attorney's fees and costs that are pursued in the action. In other words, how much time the employee put into the case at a reasonable hourly rate. If you file a lawsuit concerning unpaid overtime pay, you'll be able to go back 2 or 3 years from the date in which you filed the lawsuit. There are certain exemptions that can apply to unpaid overtime claims. They generally are the professional exemption, the administrative exemption, the executive exemption. These exemptions say in certain circumstances, an employee does not have to be paid overtime pay. These are situations in which the person is a manager, and certain other criteria. They're spelled out on our website. There's certain particular jobs that do not have to be paid overtime pay. But the bottom line is, if you're not a true manager, you work more than 40 hours a week, and you're not being paid overtime pay, please contact our office. We'll discuss all the facts with you and make a determination whether you should be paid overtime pay under the law. One other area that comes up in this whole area of unpaid wages is sometimes employers don't pay employees wages they're due. Sometimes it's commissions. Sometimes it's bonuses. And issues can arise, particularly when the employment relationship ends, as to whether the employee is entitled to unpaid wages, bonuses, or commissions. And in Pennsylvania law, the Pennsylvania Wage Payment and Collection Law provides a mechanism for an employee that has not been paid wages, bonuses, or commissions to pursue a lawsuit to recover 125% of the actual amount due, plus reasonable attorney's fees and costs. One other thing that we see come up in this whole area of unpaid wages or overtime is when an employee becomes aware somehow that, and says to the employer, I think I should be paid overtime pay. Maybe they discuss a situation with a coworker, someone at another company, and discover they should be paid overtime based on the law. If the employer takes action against the employee for making a claim, which could even be an internal claim, I should be paid overtime for my position, and the employer takes action against the employee, that's a retaliation claim which is recognized by the law. We have represented employees who go to their employer, say, I should be paid overtime pay, and the employer's reaction, you're terminated. That's a classic example of a retaliation claim. If you have unpaid wages, you think you're entitled to overtime pay, and you haven't been paid such, please contact our office.